All right, third grade, so you are already talking about rocks and minerals at home. Soon we're going to dive into other parts of the earth, okay, to see what is actually underneath our feet, okay? Now most areas that have plant life and other things, this is the 5 different layers of soil that is underneath our feet. So this is more of a scientific illustration project for us. So I want you to go ahead at the top of your paper, put some grass. Say this is the very surface. Think of it as Minecraft. Grass can only grow with a certain amount of light, so it has to be on top. And you can add a flower or something like that. To say that this is where life is. Life is growing up here. I'll put a kind of wavy line here just to indicate right exactly where the soil is happening. And camera, I'm going to throw you out. All right, so this first layer at the very top is called the organic layer. Organic means that it's either alive or it was alive at some point, okay? So it could be things like roots of plants, plants itself, or dead parts of plants, dead bugs, any animals that fall onto the surface and die. They decompose back into the soil. So this is all, I'm going to give a big taproot to our flower here. All right, this is all organic material. So we have the organic layer, okay? It's very thin. This is the thinnest layer of all of them. Then we're going to go into the next layer, and it is pretty thin too. Some gardeners know how to improve this layer of the soil, but this is where a lot of the nutrients are. There's only a little bit of rocks, and this is the topsoil. Topsoil. You might hear about that in farming or when you study the Dust Bowl. That this is where all the action happens for growing things. You might have animals like moles. They don't live here, they live near the surface. Moles look like little gray hot dogs with, big claws and pointy noses, okay? They literally do. If you've ever seen a mole above the surface, you're like, oh, that looks weird. They look very weird. Little gray hot dogs. All right. So we have this, we may have earthworms in this layer making their way through the soil. We have things like grubs, beetle larvae. They're waiting for their chance to spring up, okay? Cicada larvae. A lot of things happen. So if you use pesticides all up in this layer up here, it slowly leaches down into this layer with rainwater and kills off all these animals too. So be careful what you wish for when it comes to pesticides. All right, a lot of bacteria up here too. Lots of bacteria. And talking about that, on the side of your paper, I want you to draw 3 circles. All right, don't need to be terribly huge, okay? Just 3 circles like that. All right, moving down, we have a layer where a lot of nutrients just doesn't penetrate. It's called the bleach layer. You don't need to know that so much, but just know that right below topsoil, a lot of nutrients doesn't get below that, okay? It stops. In the layer that's below the topsoil, think the word subway, meaning a way underground, okay, under. This is the subsoil. It's called that because it is under the topsoil. So subsoil layer. We're trying to have a bit more rocks in this, more clay, especially in our area. You're not finding a lot of animal life down in this layer. Maybe bigger animals that are capable of digging bigger holes like badgers, tortoises, gopher tortoises. Should clarify that, not all tortoises dig holes. But you know, it's just not a very nice layer, okay? Past that, you know, we're starting to get further down. We're coming into what's called the parent rock layer. You heard me right, folks. It's called the parent rock layer. Okay? This layer is chunky. It is super chunky. Lots of rocks. And the further down you get, the bigger the rocks get. This is starting to get to the layer that we build a lot of our building foundations on because it does not move a lot. There's not a lot of erosion here. And then below that, just like in Minecraft, we have bedrock, which is our last layer. This is pure rock, pretty much. Now, some areas you might have, you know, a few yards of subsoil, so this may be huge, and this may be tiny, and this may be okay, and then it takes a while to get to bedrock. Some places the bedrock is really close up here, so it depends on where you are, how big each of these layers are height-wise. But the bedrock is down at the bottom. Alright, may have a few cracks in it, but that's about it. If you want to build a skyscraper, you want to make sure that the supports for the building go all the way down to bedrock, because bedrock's not going anywhere. Alright, so you're probably wondering, alright, that's great, we've done the 5 different layers of this, so what are these 3 circles for then? So, I want you to learn 3 words of these circles. Macro, meaning larger, M-A-C-R-O, macro. Micro, you have to use a microscope to see these. And then nano, way smaller than micro. You might have to use a very special microscope. You can't use a light microscope to look at these kind of things. So macro, we're going to go back to Mr. Mole here. Mr. Mole is a perfect example of what a macro organism is in this ecosystem. So I want you to draw what looks kind of like a party hat. But we're going to put a nose on the end of it and whiskers. Now moles can't see. They live so much underground that there isn't a lot of need for them to have big eyes. Okay, and besides, they're digging through soil. They don't need dirt in their eyes constantly, but they do have massive, capable of digging for the rest of their lives, claws. And I told you, they look like little gray hot dogs with big ham hand claws, okay? So a mole is a perfect example of a macro life form, one that we can see with our naked eye that lives in the soil. Micro. I'm sure if you've ever gotten a cut, your mom or dad or whoever the adult in your life said, go wash that out with soap immediately, especially if you have dirt on your hands. That's because a lot of bacteria live in the dirt, okay? So in micro, let's go ahead and put kind of a squiggle puddle shape. We're going to trace around that with a line. I'm going to put a few hairs coming out of it. It's called cilia. The central part of the cell called the nucleus, and some organelles. You'll learn more about that in 5th grade. All right, but bacteria are a perfect example. We can't see them with our naked eye because if we could, we'd be terrified all the time because they're all around us. But you can use a light microscope to see these. Now the last one, the smallest one, is these are pretty small, but what preys on them is even smaller, because for a nano you would need a special microscope to look at viruses that also live in the soil. Now not all bacteria and all viruses live in the soil. Go ahead and do a hexagon. Give it a body. And this is a special kind of virus called a bacteriophage. Has these weird arm-like things, and yes, they do look like these. If you look at them underneath the microscope, you're like, ugh, electron microscope. And they have a capsule that has all their DNA material that they need. Now these guys don't like people, okay? They're not like COVID, they're not gonna affect people. This is what they're going after, okay? So many of the viruses we actually find in the soil are affecting other things other than people. So we got macro animals like earthworms, grubs, moles. We got micro bacteria and protozoa, parasites, microscopic parasites, and then we have nano. So viruses. All right. You can add some other details up here if you want, so maybe other flowers. But that gives you an idea of what is below our feet. Wherever you go, it's still the same 5 layers of soil, unless the top part has been eroded away by weather. Some places the subsoil is sticking through and it's just you're standing directly on clay. Some places like Stone Mountain, that's pure bedrock, okay? There is no topsoil on top of it. It is a bald bedrock sticking up out of the ground. That's what Stone Mountain is in Atlanta. All right, so go ahead, color this. I'll have my finished example in the Google Classroom, and I can't wait to see what y'all do. All right, bye-bye.